Are about to start for the scouting combine, and we're going to tell you what the Colts are looking for. Let's get to it.
You are Locked On Colts, your daily Indianapolis Colts podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you all for tuning in and making us your first listen of the day. This is your daily podcast covering your Indianapolis Colts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Hello, everyone. My name is Zach Hicks, your resident film nerd of horseshoehuddle.com. My partner in crime, Jake Arthur, is our credentialed Crocs on the ground, credentialed barefoot on the ground right now because we are at Jake's house, reporting live from the scene here at Jake's house here together. And yeah, guys, the NFL Combine is going. It's active. We talked to the defensive linemen and the linebackers this morning. Now, we don't have any workout drills coming tonight or tomorrow morning. So all the workout drills will be going on tomorrow afternoon. Yep. So for now, talking about today's show, guys, we are going to dive into what the NFL Combine is, why it's important for a team like the Indianapolis Colts in particular. And we're also going to do a little bit of fun activity and talk about our personal preferences when it comes to scouting, players we like, how it fits a team like the Colts, in particular. So yeah, we're going to have some fun today. But Jake, to kick it off, to talk about how the Indianapolis Colts view the scouting combine, or how teams in general view the scouting combine, I think the Colts are a little bit different from some teams in terms of Chris Ballard is such a, intangible guy. He loves the intangibles. And a big part of intangibles is like doing all the drills, So I do think there is weight in the NFL Combine for the Colts, maybe more so than some other teams, where I think they do put a lot of stock in guys just coming out here, competing and doing the drills. But overall, I do think we do overrate the Combine a little bit. And I do think there's part of it is, we see the high RAS scores and high testing numbers from the guys the Colts actually draft, and we think that's all the Colts look at, but they see that these guys are athletic on film, and that's why they draft him there. So no, the Colts are not just looking at this guy ran fast, therefore we pick him. It's no, this guy's fast on film and the testing matched up. And that's kind of what this week is about. It's more so about crossing off that check mark on those players, being like, yeah, like, he does these things I like. He's fast, and we confirmed it at the Combine. That's kind of what the Combine's about. It's about confirming what you see on film.
Yeah, and you mentioned Chris likes those guys who actually get out there and compete. I think part of it is just seeing how guys move in person. Chris is big on being able to evaluate guys in person rather than on film.
Yeah.
He likes guys with lean muscle mass as well. You're never going to see the Colts with like these true, just like fat daddy players, like even in the middle of the defense or offensive line or anything. He likes guys who are kind of trim and have lean muscle. He wants to see their flexibility and how they move. How do their hips, or do they have kind of the fluid hips? Can they move around a bit? So it's just about collecting more knowledge on players. But like you mentioned, they get to see stuff on film too. I think there's a couple big things we're moving towards in the NFL. One of them might be the data collection of the GPS information, the zebra technology stuff. One of the more significant examples of this in the last few years is, Puka Nacua had not a great testing.
Terrible testing.
It was not great at the Combine.
Atrocious testing. You don't have to be all nice about it. Atrocious testing.
It was bad for a guy who you would hope to get on day 2 or something. It was bad.
Yeah.
But you look at like his GPS stuff, and his play speed is really good. Like, some of these guys are just not going to perform well in this setting. And that's just like, if you're running from a bear, you're going to be faster than if you're just running for the heck of it on a track, for example.
Right.
Some guys are just like that. And so that's another avenue they have now as technology keeps getting, bigger and better. That's more stuff they can have. But at heart, Chris Ballard is like he's got an old school scouting background, and he wants to see these dudes in person.
Yeah.
So that's, at the end of the day, like, he's always going to be a guy where the eye test is king for him.
Yeah, I think we can talk all about, the NFL Combine's becoming a little bit more obsolete. The NFL's moving away from doing these tests on the field and such like that. But I do think there is still inherent value in this. There's inherent value in seeing these guys move next to each other in a controlled setting, seeing them do the exact same things. And yeah, the combine does not overweigh the film. I mean, we look at a guy like Shaquille Leonard back when he came out in 2018. The Colts still drafted him when he had an atrocious combine because they trusted the film. They trusted what they saw on that film. They trusted the person, and he became one of the best linebackers in franchise history as a result after that. Now, that's not always the case, and I do think the combine is important where, say you have two linebackers, especially if they're like testing right next to each other, where this guy we have as a second-round guy, this guy we have as a mid-second or a second-round guy as well, and we saw them move next to each other at the combine, and one of them just looked so much smoother, it looked so much better. Then that can be like a tiebreaker type of thing. It's not something though where this guy was terrible on film, but he ran a 4.2, therefore now he's number one on our board. Right. It's more so about cross-checking the film, cross-checking all of that. And I think that's a big part of this process here. And then the other part of the process, which unfortunately is something that we as fans and we as media are not super privy to, is the medicals, is the interviews. And yeah, we get leaks here and there, and we get little aspects coming to us, but those are arguably bigger than the testing on the field. Like, again, we're trying to pump up the testing here by saying, like, yes, it's a good tiebreaker and it's good to check off those boxes. Like, if a corner runs under a 4.6, he can be slow with the 4.5, but you could still draft him under 4.6. Above 4.6, you can't draft him. But when it comes to the interviews and the medicals, that's probably the biggest part of the combine. You want to see what kind of person they are. And then especially with the medicals, I mean, do the Colts take Laiatu Latu at 15 last year if the NFL combine is not a thing where they can do all these medicals, cross-checking with all these different doctors and get that bill of clean health? I mean, he was relatively healthy last year. So the medicals are big. The interviews are big. And I do argue that the on-field testing is still important. It's just probably not as important as the interviews and the medicals.
Yeah, I think the on-field workout, like the actual position drills, is good for them to see. But otherwise, like certain positions have certain drills they really look for, like the explosive stuff, the broad, the vertical, and like 10-yard split, I think are big for them. They want guys to meet certain metrics there. And I was listening to Zach Taylor, the Bengals head coach, talk yesterday, and he made a really good point. Pretty sure it was Zach Taylor, but he's like, there's not a lot of opportunities for a guy to just run a full-on 40-yard sprint. It's a very short area game that they want to see how those guys perform in an like in a phone booth, but if they're able to be explosive in that short area. So that's what they're looking for a bit. When it comes to the interviews and stuff too, teams are like, you hear this a lot. So it's not so much who they interview, but like the amount of, like, if there's like a big saturation of a certain position they're interviewing, that more so I'd pay attention to. Because like I wrote this up the other day, Ryan Fowler from the Draft Network reported that the Colts had a formal meeting with Ashton Genty. I don't think that means necessarily they're gonna look long and hard at Genty if he's there at 14. But then, it comes along. They also are looking into Ollie Gordon, who is probably going to be like a 3rd, 4th round running back, another well-balanced guy. To me, it's not necessarily about those individuals, but now I'm kind of thinking that they really would like to get a playmaking running back, probably anywhere between rounds 2 to 5.
Yeah.
I don't think they're going to go Genty at 14, but looking at those two examples, I'm like, I think they actually want to kick the tires on a running back there relatively early.
Yeah, and just to kind of summarize everything in this opening segment of the show, for the Colts and for most teams, the NFL Combine is vital for the interviews and for the medicals.
Yeah.
And the on-field testing is important too, to check that box and make sure that those guys are hitting their bare minimums. For us in media, it's important because we can kind of get a sense on where the team is looking. Like you mentioned, with if the Colts are interviewing 20 running backs, maybe they're not going to take one of those 20, but they might be interested in taking a running back. We saw last year with wide receiver, they were looking at and talking to every top receiver in the draft. And they were clearly trying to move up for one, and they still took one in round 2. So you can kind of get the indications that way. And then for us in media as well, like if you want to be a good scout, this is not the always thing, but you can kind of eliminate most players where, again, if a corner's not running faster than a 4.6, odds are they're not going to work in the NFL. You might miss one or two outliers in your career doing this, but you can eliminate thousands of hours of watching film if you eliminate the 4.6 or slower corners. And same with, running backs running 4.7s. Like, you miss on a Kyron Williams, but you are saving yourself so much time and stuff like that. So there are minimums for guys to hit that are typically indicative of success in the NFL. It's not always the case, but it does make it hard to succeed. So overall, I do think the combine is a very important event in the offseason. Maybe it's not as important as we make it out to be with the television aspect of it and all and hyping it up, but it is an important event for these guys' NFL futures. And there's a reason why, it's one of the biggest events of the year every single offseason. But that's all we have for that aspect of today's show. Coming up, though, Jake and I have been doing this NFL draft scouting for a decade each at this point. Jake, maybe even longer than a decade at this point, going back to Pro Football Spot, where it all began for most of us in this industry. So we're going to talk about kind of our types of players that we enjoy to watch on film and our types of players, for better or for worse, that we enjoy, projecting to the NFL level. All right, Jake. So I'm going to kick this off to you to start off, where I obviously have my types here. This can be any position, offense or defense. When you're watching film of a college player, again, any position, you can go to any of them here, but what are the guys that make you just giddy, excited, pumped up? Who are the guys that, what type of player are you watching?
Yeah, so these guys get me every year, and I'm going to start out with them because it's my favorite type of player to find because the hit rate is so good. Okay. And it's one of the ones where I just want to tell Chris Ballard, give Papa the keys on this one. Let me drive the train this round. But if I find a safety who is really intelligent, has good football IQ, good instincts, you can tell that they're reading the quarterback all day long. And they it's like they know the field better than the quarterback does. Those players almost always translate. The weird thing is a lot of the time, those guys do not test well before the draft. A recent example is Cameron Kinchens last year. I loved him. He started out as most people's top safety, and then he didn't have great size. He didn't do well at the combine, and then other guys started to pass him up. But you know what? He was really good for the Rams. He's a guy the Colts really could have used. Javon Bullard is another example. There weren't many safeties that tested well last year. He did okay, but I watched him and I loved him. I thought he was really smart. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson is one of my favorites of all time. Landon Collins, I can't remember how well he tested, but incredibly smart. I love seeing these guys that I can tell they're playing chess while everybody else is playing checkers.
Yeah.
And again, really high hit rate for them. I know Chris loves athletic guys so much, but I think in some positions, it just doesn't matter as much. I think if a player is smart and instinctive enough, they're going to get to the ball regardless of whether they're running a 4-4 about it. If they know where the ball's going, they're going to get there.
Yeah. I think one thing that kind of hurts this archetype, though, compared to other archetypes we're going to talk about, is it's hard to quantify instinctiveness.
It's all tape.
Yeah, it's all tape. So you can kind of look me to push back on you a little bit here and say that these guys have a high hit rate. You could say this for any slow safety that hits, you could say they were instinctive, but for every slow safety that stinks, you could say they weren't instinctive enough, but
it's
I
know when you watch them, they're always in the right place at the right time. You don't catch them out of position. And a good example I have from Chauncey Gardner-Johnson when he was at Florida, he was over on one, outside the numbers on one area of the field and saw the quarterback about to throw it deep. And he was nowhere in the same zip code as it, but he saw what the quarterback was about to do, got all the way across the field and made this beautiful interception. And I was like, the guy just knows exactly what he's doing. And look at him. He's bounced around a little bit, but Chauncey Gardner-Johnson has been a difference maker every place he's been in the NFL. Now he's a Super Bowl champion.
Yeah, CD Deuce, really good player right there in the NFL. Going to mine, though, sticking with the secondary, and you guys are going to hate me for it because the Colts have missed on this archetype so many times. I love me a big corner. I do. I fall for the big corners every time. I will say, weirdly enough, though, I did not fall for Quincy Wilson. I hated Quincy Wilson.
He was slow as
but
all get out.
but I'm fine with slow big corners. Like as long as they have good feet and they're physical, give me the big corners, baby. Like kill a Witherspoon.
Let him be 22 though.
Yeah.
Because I will say it does seem like the younger the player, it's legit. They're young and a lot of times immature, and it takes them too long to figure it out.
That's true. That's true. But like the Akilla Witherspoons, Isaiah Olivers, those are the lower ends, or I guess middle ends there. They both turned out decent careers.
Tariq Woolen was one of your favorites.
Tariq Woolen, I had a late first round grade on. If you throw in former wide receiver as well,
you loved him.
All in. Former wide receiver, moved to corner. Luckily, I was kind of out of this phase of my life by the time the Colts took Juju Brents. So I remember when the Colts took Juju Brents, I was like, every part of my body saying I love this pick, but I'm scared because every part of my body loves this pick. That was kind of the fear with Juju Brents, and unfortunately it hasn't worked out. But yeah, Tariq Woolen's probably the high end of that type. But I just love me a big corner, and there's a couple in this class where I'm going to let you guys know in the final segment that they're going to be my boys. I love them to death, even if they don't work out in the NFL. But yeah, big corners I love. And then get into a more positive one for me, at least. Offensive linemen that can play all five positions. Yeah. You know, I love that just not stuck to one spot type of guy. We're going to talk about more in the final segment, but like a Zach Tom, for instance, for the Packers, a pure five position guy. Will Fries, I loved coming out. I know he's transitioned really well to guard.
Michael Dieter from Wisconsin was one of mine.
Michael Dieter was one. Yeah, I mean, like Will Fries for me, I think was a good one though, because I was like, look, I can play him at tackle and feel fine, but I think he can play guard. I think he could play center, and it's why I had a late third, early fourth on him. And the Colts took him in the seventh, and he's turned into a really good guard there. So I love me some linemen that can play across it with the athleticism, with the length, with the size. Like, give me those guys who can just do it all. And I can make it work. Because if they fail at tackle, I could put them at guard, or I could put them at center.
Yeah.
You know, if they fail at guard, I can try them at tackle. Like, there's so many opportunities with those guys. Whereas, like, if I have a skinny, slow guy or something, and he fails at tackle, I can't put him at guard. He's going to get run over, you know? So I like the guys with that positional versatility, or guys who played all five in college. That's why I kind of liked Tanner Bortolini last year. He played all five in college, you know? I just like that upside and potential with offensive linemen.
Another one for me, and this one's always got me, a linebacker that throws caution to the wind. They diagnosis murder. They diagnose what's happening and they fly recklessly to the ball. These guys can shoot the gaps. They get through the trash no matter what, and they get to the ball carrier in the backfield, whether it's a stretch play, whether it's just a simple handoff, whatever. These linebackers that do not give a damn and they just fly through the trenches to the ball, a lot of them are heat seekers, and they are very accurate and can make themselves slim through traffic to get to the ball. I love those guys. Like, classic examples for me is like Denzel Perriman, Reuben Foster. They're usually going to be on like the more well-built side. Some of them are better than others in coverage. Like Denzel Perriman has never been lauded for his abilities in coverage, but like those guys, Reuben Foster and Denzel Perriman were two of my absolute favorite examples. There's a couple in this draft class we'll get to as well. But yeah, a linebacker who is not passive by any means and is full-on aggressive. They're usually going to, I mean, there's some of them that are not great tacklers and they overshoot. They get a little overzealous. But I mean, that's what separates the ones you love from the ones you like and feel are decent. But
yeah,
those type of linebackers that shoot the gaps and get in the backfield, oh, I love it. Those are more box players a lot of the times, but I love what I love, you know?
Yeah, the Landon Roberts types, the Matthew Adams. I loved Matthew Adams when the Colts took him that year. Yeah, just the guys who are just violent. I love the violent one. If I ever see a linebacker on college film take on a lead blocker and still make the tackle, like take on a lead blocker and make that lead blocker in pain.
Yeah.
I know the NFL is trying to take away my love by making the game safer, you know, but oh God, I loved it back in the day, seeing linebackers who could just fit and hit. It's such a good time watching guys like that.
Yeah.
But those are our types of guys we like. We also have some other ones. Like I love me a safety to linebacker convert.
Oh yeah.
I fell in love with the Jeremy Cashes and the Deion Buchanans and the Obi Melifonwus. I loved all of those back in the day. But yeah, we all have our types. We all have what we like. And now it's time for us, Jake, to transition to talking about players in this upcoming draft that fit not only our mold, but honestly, some of these molds are about kind of the Colts. So we're going to talk about that here in just a second.
When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there is no better place to get in on all that sweet action than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off and you want to still be betting on a fourth quarter comeback, you just got the itch to still be betting. You can stay in on the action, and if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can combine everything into a same-game parlay. I love using FanDuel's live betting features personally because it just keeps every moment of the game exciting. When there's a lull in the action, you can kind of bet on what's the next big thing that's going to happen. And plus, the app is really easy to use, and you don't have to wait on your money. You win your money, you want it right away, and you get that with FanDuel. Right now, FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, so let's talk about some of these guys that really fit our archetype, Zach. So I'll kick it over to you first. This big old athletic corner, whatever you want to go with. If it's a different type that's really got you, if the bag is heavy this year in a certain area, what are we looking at?
Yeah, let's actually start with the safety position. Okay. And we have, because I think there's one guy that fits my type perfectly, one guy who fits your type perfectly, and one guy who's the perfect mix. Everything. So my guy, Nick Emanwari from South Carolina, just everything I love in a safety. He's big, he's physical, you can play him in the box, he's a tight end eraser, he's just has the instincts around the line of scrimmage, and unlike what you think about in safeties, Jake, this guy's going to be a freak in the testing. Give me the freaks at safety. Get out of here.
Is he smart?
Get out of here with your 5-second 40 safeties. I need Nick Emanwari to the Colts because once his testing comes in, I'm not going to stamp it, but
he is going to be a freak.
I think we're going to see 4 threes. I think we're going to see near 40-inch vertical. I think we're going to see 11 broad. And this is a guy, again, he's 6'3", 227 at safety. Don't overthink this guy. Don't put him at free safety. Put him around the box. Let him fly around. Put him at some linebacker and have some fun. And
star position.
Right, and have some fun with him. So that's my guy at safety. I'm going to kick it to your guy who's in the thumbnail, who's your guy at safety, because I don't know how fast he's going to be in this draft, but his film is good. I will give you that. His film is really good, and I think some of our Hoosiers here listening, not our Hoosiers, but our Indiana football
natives,
natives, not our Indiana fans because of what happened in the playoff, but they're gonna like this guy.
Yeah, so we're talking about Xavier Watts. Again, this is not a guy who I think is just gonna blow the doors off the combine or anything like that. I think he'll be fine. Like, you see him on tape, and he's a decent athlete, but he knows where the ball is going. He's got great ball skills. He takes that ball away, and he was one of the biggest star players on a team that made it all the way. They were just short of the national championship, and he was a big part of it. Guys, I feel like safeties anymore, I mean, a little bit of a renaissance in Detroit, but like safeties overall kind of fell off when it came to taking the ball away in recent years. And this is one of the guys that can do it, but he's not the type that there was a kid from Louisville like 8 years ago or something.
Don't say Gerard Holloman.
Yeah, I think that's it. Yeah, so he had like 8 or 10 picks in 1 year or whatever, but he could not tackle at all. Like, the only thing he could do was get interceptions. This isn't that type of guy. He's going to be able to stay on the field at all times. He's all right in run support. He's not going to shy away from contact. Again, in pass coverage, he knows what's coming before the quarterback even gets rid of the ball. And again, he takes the ball away. So I don't think he's going to test particularly well, but I don't care. What he can do on tape is something that can provide all 32 teams.
Yeah, I think if he hits the bare minimums, I'm good with him. Don't run a 4.7 and we're good. But I think the guy who kind of combines both of our types in one is Malachi Starks from Georgia. And we're not going to spend too much time on him because we've talked about him a lot this offseason. But Malachi Starks, big, strong, fast, good around the box, can make plays on the ball. He's been making plays since he was 18 at Georgia. So
Position versatility.
we've got 3 safeties that we're really big on. I'm higher on Emanwari than you probably will be, and you're probably going to be higher on Watts than I will be. But we like the safeties in this class. Sticking with defensive back, though, my 2 big boys at DB, so you guys just know the Colts are going to be interested because they're big guys and I like them. They always end up taking my guys at corner. Darian Porter from Iowa State is one of them. And then Azaria Thomas from Florida State. Very, very different players, though. Azaria Thomas, 20 years old, super athletic, press guy, gets physical, good feet. He's going to have to grow into being the player that you want him to be. But the sky is the limit for this guy. He can be a fantastic press corner in the NFL. I love him. I'm getting higher on him every single day, and I know it's a problem. But big fan. And then Darian Porter on the flip side of that is going to be 25 in his rookie season.
Yeah.
Former wide receiver, transition to corner. He's going to run low 4.3s, I think, or mid 4.3s at 6'2", 200 pounds. He's blocked multiple kicks and punts in his career. So day one, you get a high-end special teamer, and you get the upside of being a guy who can play press on your defense and do some good things. So look, guys, I'm ready to hurt again. I'm just ready to hurt again. I see these 2 types. I see the Juju Brentses. I mean, I think they're faster than Juju Brents, obviously, but I think they're going to be freaky testers. They're big. They're strong. Press coverage guys. I'm ready to hurt again. I'm in love. I'm in love with both. I love them both.
You should be. I like both of those guys. Saw them both up close and personal at the Senior Bowl. Azaria Thomas in particular, I'm a big fan of.
So good.
That's your direct. We didn't get the Juju Brents thing right yet, but here's another shot at it. That's exactly what Azaria Thomas is. For some of my linebackers I'm looking at, Jihad Campbell is another one we've talked a good bit about lately. So he, violent, physical freak, super athletic, not a passive bone in his body. He's going to go attack, and he's going to do it violently. So that's a guy, if the possibilities are endless for the Colts at 14. I certainly think Campbell is a guy that's got to be in consideration for them. He can line up next to Franklin, and I think he might be able to mask some of the issues. I think they're both decent blitzers. Obviously, Campbell is a guy that comes off the ball and gets after it quite a bit more than Franklin. But I think they would pair up together quite well. Jeffrey Bassa.
Who?
Obviously, yeah, the guy I mention every single episode. You guys will maybe find this story funny. So Zach and I were talking about guys last night. We were talking about Jeffrey Bassa while we're out at dinner. Who walks in? We see someone, a player with linebacker 2 on their sweatshirt. I'm like, who is that? It is Jeffrey Bassa. So He's everywhere. He's in the brain. He's on the podcast. He's coming to dinner with us. Like Jeffrey Bassa is where it's at. I take that as a sign that he would be a great fit for the Colts. He was supposed to be there while Zach and I were there. Jihad Campbell and Jeffrey Bassa are definitely 2 linebackers that fit exactly what the Colts should be looking for. Whether it was Gus Bradley, whether it's Lou Anarumo now, like these are guys that fit what the Colts do. Bassa, incredibly rangy, more is going to be more so the will linebacker type, and Campbell can do it all. Yeah, Campbell maybe your classic Mike, but he's going to have a lot of responsibilities wherever he goes.
Yeah, Jeffrey Bassa is not quite the physical, in terms of size and arm length. He's not quite the same mold of these 2 guys, but Divine Diablo and Jalen Carlisle were 2 guys I really liked in their draft years. They were safeties converted to linebacker. Now, Bassa converted in college. Those guys converted after college. But I think we see Bassa hit low 4.4s. I think he's going to be in a similar vein of those 2 guys. And look, keep drafting me those safety to linebacker converts. I always fall for the type, so I totally get it. 2 guys I want to finish off this show with, because I'm doing offensive linemen for the Indy Draft Guide. Shout out to the Indy Draft Guide there. And 2 guys who are tough write-ups for me, but in a good way, are Gray Zabel from North Dakota State and Marcus Bowe from Purdue. I don't know where to put either of these guys right now. I want to put him at center. I want to put him at guard. Bowe, in particular, I want to play at tackle first. But to me, that makes them my guys, because I feel like I have so much room to work with these guys. Like a guy like Marcus Bowe, for instance, I think he can play all 5 positions. I'm going to try him at tackle first. But if he fails there, I have a center, I have a guard. And even if he can't start in the NFL, a 5-position backup is so valuable. People don't talk about enough with draft prospects about the potential of a high-end backup. And if Marcus Bowe is your swing tackle, your swing center, and your swing guard, like a Zach Tom has been for the Green Bay Packers the last couple of years, you're saving positions on the roster. Gray Zabel in a similar vein, like I think he can be a Frank Ragnow type of center. I think he can be a Will Fries caliber guard. And honestly, I think he could be a perfectly adequate tackle as well. So those two guys, to me, when I watch their film, I watch them at the Senior Bowl. They're not perfect players, but when I see 5 position versatility on the offensive line, love it. I love it. That's my type of guys there. So offensive lineman, I'm a huge O-line nerd. And when I see guys who can just do it all, and I can see how smooth the transition could be at all 5 of those positions, I'm smitten right there.
Zabel definitely made himself some money because not only did all of us watching, whether it was on TV or there in Mobile watching, could clearly tell he was doing a great job. Everyone who went against him, in the game, throughout the week in practice, everyone shouted him out and talked about how well he did and just how insanely talented he was. He won almost every one-on-one rep he did. Like Gray showed 5 position flexibility, and he did it at such a high level. It's the biggest level he's been presented so far, and he passed the test with flying colors.
Yeah, I will say Gray Zabel, if I had to put a stamp on one offensive lineman in this class that's going to be good in the NFL, like just if I had to guarantee one of them to be good, Zabel's the most confident I would feel. And that's with him not being my number 1 interior guy, certainly not being my top tackle, but I feel so safe with him being a solid player. My comp right now, I think, is Frank Ragnow. In there. I think he can be a dominant center. So yeah, Gray Zabel, one of my guys. The Colts took him in round 2. You would not see me complaining. I'd be very happy. But that's all we have for today, guys. A lot more draft content and everything coming the rest of the week. And we'll actually be able to react to the testing numbers on most of the days. I mean, we'll have shows tomorrow during the testing, so we'll probably have to do something else tomorrow. But Friday, we'll have reactions to testing and anticipating what's coming. Saturday, we'll probably do a show as well, reacting to the testing. Sunday, if I'm not, crazy hungover on the drive, we'll do a reaction show. So we have a lot coming your guys' way with the NFL Combine this week. Again, on-field stuff starts Thursday. So we'll be talking all draft all the time this weekend. Thank you guys for making Locked On Colts your first listen today and every day. Now for your second listen, check out the Locked On NFL Draft with Damian Parson and Keith Sanchez. Now the season is over. Get the latest draft rankings, rumors, and news every single day. Find Locked On NFL Draft on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. And if you guys want to become a Locked On Colts insider and chat with us directly and get first dibs on Q&A episodes, make sure you follow the link in our show notes. And if you don't already, follow at Locked On Colts, at Jake Arthur NFL, and at ZachHicks2, all on Twitter. We're also on TikTok and Instagram. Also, subscribe to us on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. We love your guys' ratings, reviews as well, and we'll catch you guys back here tomorrow afternoon.